You've been asked, it says, is this your natural hair color? So, the first thing we're going to do before we begin, because this just isn't right, you're all going to move into sections of your hair color. And I was going to say natural hair color, but it's going to become a little bit complicated, so let's just do, and I don't see enough gingers to represent, like natural gingers to represent, I can only see two. So I'm going to give the fake gingers the status of real gingers today. So can all the gingers please come to the first row. Then I want blondes, then I want brown heads, then I want black heads, and grey. Hey?
I'm sure that's discrimination.
I'm pretty sure it is. Which is part of the thing. Okay, so go, and if you want to move back later, if you need to go to the back, that's cool. But come guys, I know there's not enough rows, so redheads in the front, blondes in the second row, brownies, and make friends with your fellow other hair colored people. And there are only a few seats for gingers, which makes sense. So, on the narrow seat. Ollie, you represent gingers today. Wow. Come on, I need my hello Jim. Okay. So, thank you for cooperating. That was really fun. I was a bit nervous that no one would want to move. Okay, let me now properly begin. So the first time, oh, sorry, I don't want to hold that. Okay, I have to hold it. The first time I gave this talk was about my ginger collection was at TEDx Johannesburg in August 2013. Now I'm going to give a rendition of this talk, but I need to start from scratch, so you need to now forget everything that's just happened and suspend your disbelief. Okay. Just get on here. We, the natural gingers of the world, hereby declare the following principles as part of the forthcoming revolution. We strive for a ginger utopia, a world where red-headed people not only are not ridiculed and ostracized, but where our tonal superiority is envied and celebrated. Our status and privilege will be great and abundant. We exist without skin color, eye color, religion, nationality, age, creed, sex, or class. We do not discriminate on this basis. We are bonded through our hair color alone, which should be natural and true. The ginger legitimacy and purity of our people is vital to its longevity. Therefore, it is crucial, where possible, for gingers to procreate with other gingers. It is crucial to avoid contamination. So this is an excerpt from the Ginger Manifesto, the full version of which can be found on my website. My title of Ginger Collector most certainly alludes to some kind of crazy, obsessive-compulsive person, someone who has boxes of stamps, butterflies with pins in them, or even gingers within jars in their basement. So what does it mean then to collect gingers? Over a 2.5-year period, I methodically and most definitely crazily and obsessively photographed 500 red-headed men, women and children locally and abroad. As an artist, the initial idea to start photographing gingers came from an aesthetic appreciation of the unique and romantic color palette of a redhead. It was also an exploration of self, looking at an aspect of my own identity and creating a sort of self-portrait. I began to research the historical, biblical, mythical, and literary representations of redheads and the stereotypes that have emerged from those and exist in present day. What stereotypes come to mind when you think of a redhead? Give me some answers. Characteristics, personality characteristics. Fiery, yeah. Well, gingers are said to be stubborn, fiery, tempestuous, passionate, and sexual. Their characters are often contentious. Historically, they have been considered madmen, traitors, temptresses, vampires, and even demons. In the 15th century, they were even thought to be witches, and thousands were burnt at the stake. In recent years in popular media, there have been many parodies and skits about the controversial nature of gingers. The Catherine Tate Show and an MIA music video portray gingers as victims that, in the former, seek refuge in a ginger refugee camp, and in the latter are abducted and brutally murdered. In South Park, these ginger victims rise up and become the oppressors intent on destroying all non-gingers. These seemingly humorous yet satirical references definitely influenced the tone that my work would follow. It was only after my first shoot with 7 gingers where this project began to take its current form. So my time management was really bad, and instead of having the gingers coming one after the other, they all ended up being there at the same time. These strangers, who only had one thing in common, started to share similar stories about being a redhead, both positive and negative. For instance, being in a shopping mall and getting stopped by old grannies coming to touch our hair, and being told by the hairdresser, "You can't get this color out of a bottle." These stories were told verbatim, no matter how mundane they were. We have also endured the name calling, which I'm always hesitant to mention for fear of perpetuating them, but I'm going to show you anyway. And I'll move on. From this initial experience, I started to notice a very obvious, inherent sense of community and collective experience amongst the otherness of the gingers. And it was from this realization that the red color of their hair became invisible. I started questioning what defines a group of people: a race, a nation, a community. Is it genetics? Is it shared experience, physical features, lineage, or facing similar prejudices? With these notions in mind, I started doing research into different systems of classification, systems of separation, of inclusion and exclusion. Particular systems which are linked to my own personal histories of being South African and Jewish are those used in apartheid and the Holocaust. Based on the concept of eugenics, both oppressors desired and implemented, albeit with different methods, structures to ensure racial purity. They intended to keep uncontaminated what they thought was a superior race. Hitler called this the Übermensch, or Superman. They wanted to separate the good from the bad. I asked myself, what if gingers could be a race of their own? What if gingers could take over the world? And what if this ginger utopia that I had imagined could become a reality? In order to cause a revolution, I would need to collect as many gingers as possible. I would need to empower this minority group that is only 2% of the world population. I would also need to do something about the fact that the ginger gene is recessive. So, if 2 gingers have a child, it is almost 100% guaranteed that they would have a redheaded child. So this is an actual real ginger family that I photographed, which is pretty cool. So, can you see my master plan forming? Any single ginger men, send them my way. And so my search to begin, hundreds of gingers began. I just want to quickly say, Artists are not the same as designers, so my PowerPoint presentation is really horrible. So please don't judge me. I know there are a lot of designers out here, and artists and designers just aren't the same thing. Anyway, just saying. Like the obsessive collector that I referred to earlier, I spend many hours and much effort sourcing the gingers for my archive. For my first 100 subjects, I would literally stalk people in bars, clubs, shops, doctors' rooms, and on the street. I stopped my car, I was driving and I saw someone walking and I pulled over and I stopped my car. That's how extreme it got. Then the word of mouth started to spread and people joined me on my quest to collect gingers. After all, everyone has at least one token ginger friend, right? Yes. No. you're that token. I can almost guarantee you that after this talk, you will become super aware of the gingers around you, and please, when you do, send them my way. In interviewing all the gingers that I photographed, I learned that most of them had a difficult time growing up, were teased, ostracized, and made to feel different. But now, they wanted to publicly celebrate their gingerness. I even had non-gingers trying to convince me of their supposed gingerness. They would say, my hair looks a little bit red in this kind of light, or I have a little bit of ginger in my beard. It was interesting to me that people wanted to be a part of this elite collection that I'd created. Early on in the project, I set myself a midterm goal of collecting 500 gingers for my first solo exhibition, which took place at Circa Gallery in Johannesburg in early 2013. However, 500 now seems a pittance compared to the thousands large database I've managed to grow. I get emails almost daily from gingers asking to be collected. I managed to grow my national network to a global level when I attended the Redhead Day in the Netherlands in 2012. In the small town of Breda, I was surrounded by thousands of gingers. It was beautiful, strange, and surreal. I felt like I was in a science fiction movie, something out of Gattaca, perhaps. It was a snippet of the ginger utopia that I had imagined. The collection of hundreds of portraits narrates this utopia. The close-up, full frontal, and unsmiling portraits are reminiscent of identity photos or mugshots. The images are stark, with a white background, white shirt, and even lighting. The portraits do not intend to show the subject's individuality, but rather they emphasize the collective. They highlight the sameness and uniformity of ginger-haired people. Each portrait, each portrait is classified within a range of categories from strawberry blonde to dark auburn. When I started to imagine what a world governed by gingers might look like, I realized that there would always be some level of hierarchy that exists. There would always be this idea that I am more ginger than you, which is this is exactly the Catherine Tate show, sketch, you should look at it. It seems to be human nature, I believe. Even within a single race or group, there is always this need to create a difference or an other. My classification system is pseudoscientific. Much like the infamous pencil tests used during apartheid and the nose measuring tests used for Jews during the Holocaust, I decided in a purely visual way who should be a part of which subgroup. Additional elements to the project, which act as satirical subtext to this imagined narrative that I've created, and for me elevates this artwork from an aesthetic portrait series, include the Manifesto of Gingers, which I handed out at the Redhead Day in 2012. A ginger history, so I worked with a historian to create a ginger history, and it's actually not an untrue history, but it's a selective history, which in my mind is how most histories are told. So a lot of it, this is truth, but it's actually, it's selective. And ginger identity cards. And this is actually the work. It's a series of about 6 identity cards, which is now part of the Vita collection. The whole exhibition wasn't part of their collection, unfortunately, but just this work. and these were given to the gingers as well. I believe that it is human nature to create separation and difference. We have gone through really traumatic histories of racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism. So those isms are now taboo. They aren't often spoken about or discussed in a comfortable manner. We have discriminated on the basis of skin color, religion, culture, and sexual preference. So what's left? Maybe hair color? Is gingerism perhaps the last acceptable form of prejudice? Is hair color that different from skin color? After all, both are genetic and pigment-based manifestations. Both seem a ridiculous basis on which to create an other, be it to create superiority or conversely inferiority. I'm not saying that the prejudice that gingers experience can be equated to those histories that have ended in unequal rights, apartheid, or even genocide. Ginger hair becomes a placeholder, a symbol, a metaphor to deal with these very real and still prevalent notions. I collect gingers to explore what defines a group of people, a race, a nation, a community, what makes us different or the same, superior or inferior, included or excluded. But most importantly, I collect gingers to fight against ginger discrimination and rise up and become the master race they are intended to be. So that kind of was the thing, and now I'm going to go into and now, because that was like a long time ago. It took 3 years of my life to photograph these gingers, and that ended in November 2012, and the exhibition was Jan 2013. And I don't know if you've ever heard of post-exhibition blues. It's a thing, promise. So after my exhibition, I was kind of in a space where I really didn't know how to move forward. You know, I managed to put that down. I managed to get a lot of local and international press out of this project, and it kind of like, it was a bit scary for me. I didn't really know why and how, and I kind of felt like I should move this forward, and there was kind of a lot of pressure on me, I think, because of this, to move forward. But I was ready to kind of move on, not from the gingers, but just from the same methodology that I had done for the last 3 years. It does become boring photographing someone the same way with the same lighting 500 times. So yeah, I was kind of ready to move forward from that. But that took me a good year actually to kind of work through what I wanted to do next. So the things that in analyzing the exhibition and the project, the things that kind of came out of it for me were, the interesting things that came out of it for me was this notion of archiving, and then also participation, creating networks and crowd, because I think one of my strengths is actually bringing people together. I do it through assemblage, through my organization, and I kind of wanted to play on that strength, and how interesting it was to bring these 500 gingers together. So participation network, also was exposed to crowdsourced art, which I'm going to speak about in a moment, and then also data, and data as a tool for classification. So I'm going to go into all of those now in terms of kind of what I've been doing recently. So it's a bit difficult to see because it's so small, but so in about a year after this exhibition, and going through all those weird insecurities and uncertainties, I became very interested in data and data visualizations. And so I took the data that I interviewed all the gingers that I photographed. And I've never watched them, and I'm so scared to, because that's probably, I don't know, half an hour times 500. If anyone would like to take that job off my hands, please volunteer. But I did, they filled in forms, and obviously I created my kind of color classification system, which I'll talk about in a sec. So I had all this data, and I wanted to kind of retrospect and look back at the 500 gingers and see what I could do with it. So I'd already created that hair classification, which I showed you earlier, that Pantone. And also at the back of the identity card, I did this classification as well. I classified their hair, their hair, their eyes, their skin color, and their freckle density. So, so that's what those Pantones are at the top. There's hair, eye, skin color, and freckle density as a percentage. And so basically, each column of this, it's kind of runs horizontally. So each column represents an individual and their distinctive color classification. The Pantone strips, for me, again, are the pseudoscientific instruments to place the person in their respective categories. It was really just me looking at it and saying, I think that they go there. And I think that this, what I'm doing is I mean, it's critically, and I'm critiquing, but it is quite a fascist act of grouping people and reducing people to a color or a type. And it is intentional, and it is as a form of critique. But on the other hand, it becomes quite a beautiful and whimsical display of kind of color and tone. So this work, this was part of the Absolute Atelier competition this year, and this work led me to start looking at more data visualizations. So again, artist, not designer. I'm still getting there, and I want to actually work with designers and programmers and stuff to create or learn. I don't know if it's possible, but to learn more about creating data visualization. So these were done very manually in Excel, and basically these represent the 500 gingers that I photographed with different kind of priorities. So the one on the left would be just the total amount of each color. The second one is just a kind of patchwork, and then it's interesting because in the white sections, that's their number. Each person has an identity number, and so each person almost gets a little code, in a sense, a code of five squares, which I think I need to push further, because I think a lot can. It's called, I've been working with a statistician for another project that I'm going to talk about now, and it could become like their signature, their kind of, what's it called? Yeah, or like a barcode, or a kind of, it's unique to them. Profile, I don't know, there's an actual like statistical name for it. And then the one on the right is, it's chronology with male and female. So like that's how many per shoot that I did. You can see the very tall one was in Breda when I photographed 50 people in one day. So you can just see the progression of how I photographed, and then the male and female ratio, females at the top. And then, yeah, and just a few more. And then I found a really cool infographic program called Infogram, which created a few of those, but they're quite limited. So yeah, so just playing with data and using this massive pool of information from the 500 gingers that I got to kind of move forward and make new work and make more work. Then drawing from that, again, needed to move on from gingers, was a little bit sick of gingers. I almost considered dyeing my hair after this exhibition. I was really sick of it. But I wanted to really kind of go forward with a similar kind of methodology or similar concept to what I was doing, and this whole notion of archiving and collecting and the gathering of groups of people. So I kind of looked at myself and my own identity, and I didn't want to use the typical characteristics that we use to classify people, such as skin and religion and sex and etc. So I started looking at kind of obscure coordinates of my own identity. So I was like, okay, Anthea Pokroy is a ginger, an artist, 161 centimeters tall, the youngest of 7, obsessive compulsive, etc. So I was like, okay, well, wouldn't it be interesting to start collecting groups of people that are stemming from different characteristics of my identity. So this next series that I'm working on is called The Portrait of the Artist, and I'm basically collecting artists now. And what I've proposed, I've been part of 2 group exhibitions this year. One was at the Turbine Art Fair, and the other was at the ABSA Gallery. It's actually finishing today, so you're not going to be able to get there in time. But yeah, basically I proposed to collect and archive and document all the artists that I was exhibiting with on the exhibition, and kind of create a new data set from which to work. So I've been kind of creating, so I did these extensive interviews with all these artists, been photographing them in similar style to the Gingers. People always ask me, especially Maria Paula, why are people not smiling? And for me, it just doesn't make sense. It's meant to be an identity photo. It's meant to be a mugshot style. It's really a form of archiving and documentation. You know, it's not even about the portrait, really. It's like a remnant of this person. So yeah, so basically this infographic kind of, I mean, the one interesting thing that I took out of it, which I'll talk about, the others aren't that interesting, but is I asked the question, what is your job? And I tracked how many seconds and how many ums they said before admitting what, I mean, and I think most people here are creatives, and you also, like, when someone says to you, what is your job? Well, especially artists, because, I mean, yeah. So it was quite interesting. It ranged from 1 second for someone to say I'm an artist to about like 29 seconds of waffle and like 7 ums for them to say I'm an artist. And I think it was really interesting because I think artists don't have faith in this profession because I think society doesn't regard it very highly as well. So it was interesting for me to see that it was such a strong reflection of how the confidence of artists from, I think, from how society sees our profession. And then there's just a few others. And then, so that was part of a map that was at the Turbine Art Fair, and then this was the actual artwork. It was on a wall, pretty much the size. And what I did was from the data set, I drew statistics from that group of artists. So there were 35 artists in this show. So I'm just going to read some of them to you. Oh, the top one's my favorite, I think, and I can't read it. That's true. Okay, artists take 3.89 seconds and 0.6 ums to admit they are artists, whereas 22% do not refer to themselves as artists. Now, go back. Artists think that you think they are poor, lazy, crazy, and on drugs. Whilst 37% take drugs, only 11% are poor, none of them are starving, and most work on their art 33.64 hours per week. 88% of artists believe they see the world differently to other people. 48% of these believe that they observe things that others don't. Artists are most likely to have short hair, equally straight or curly, oval faces, and brown eyes. More artists enjoy the process of making and discovery in art rather than the finished product. 25% of these artists are insecure about their work. 35% are insecure at times. The rest are confident, etc. You can kind of just read the rest. So that was quite cool, I think. I quite enjoyed it, and so as I said, I started working with a statistician, which was interesting because it was one of the artists on the show's husband. So when I interviewed her, she said, you need to talk to my husband. So he's like the head of actuarial science at the University of the Free State, and we've kind of been having these back and forth conversations about the potential and what I could actually be doing with this. And then the latest piece was at the Absa Gallery, and basically I asked, so I did the whole process again, interviewed, created, so basically I quantified all the answers that were given to me. So it became a binary of zeros and ones, an Excel spreadsheet of zeros and ones, which I actually should have put on because it looks really cool. But basically I asked the statistician to create a scatter plot for me, which then started explaining, and this is all like algorithmic stuff that I don't understand, but this is without any kind of subjective prejudice. This wasn't made by a human. This was a computer that drew through the data. It came up with this scatter plot. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm doing, that just did. And then this is also the same one about the artist and then how many seconds they took to admit they were an artist. So basically I'm just playing around with the data that I'm now collecting. My plan is to propose to be part of as many group exhibitions as I can and collect and archive and document all the artists on those exhibitions. For the next kind of 2-3 years. That's kind of my plan. And then afterwards, hopefully have about 500 artists to have a solo show with. So that's kind of like my plan. I hope it doesn't change. I hope I don't get bored of it, but yeah, I'm quite excited about it actually. And what else I wanted to say? Oh, and then the last thing, just to kind of go back to Gingers, is, and crowdsourced art, is so Gingers are not dead, they're just resting for now. And I just needed a bit of a break, and I also probably need a lot of money for this next plan, or really nice, clever programming people. So basically, as I said, I got a lot of international contact, like people from the Gingers from the Middle East, from South America, all over Europe, Israel, Australia started contacting me. And I've got an insane database of these Gingers and I don't know what to do with them. So my idea is to create like an online platform where Gingers can upload their own photo, but obviously there have to be like strict guidelines. I don't want crap photos on my website. So there have to be like strict guidelines in what the image will look like, and I'm still figuring out how to actually do that. But yeah, I'm really interested in creating like an interactive website where Gingers can kind of upload their photos, and then also and then from the data that is collected from their input to create beautiful data visualizations through that. And just to give you some nice things to go look at, there's a guy called Aaron Coblin who is like the king of crowdsourced art. He started off, I think one of his first projects was called the Sheep Market. I don't know if it was 500, but he basically put out into there's something called the Mechanical Turk, which is like an Amazon, I don't understand it exactly, so I'm not going to, just go look it up. But basically he paid these people, I think they're programmers that sit online, and if you want them to do something, I think that's what it is, it's like a forum of programmers. And he basically paid programmers $1 to draw a sheep, a digital sheep. And basically this website is, there's about, I think it might be more than 500, just different versions of drawn sheep. And then if you click on one, it goes to it, and you can actually see the process of the person drawing it, and it's very cool. And then the Johnny Cash project, which I think is quite a well-known project, is it's a music video of Johnny Cash, and basically the viewer is invited to select a frame and draw it and recreate it, obviously digitally. That's the screen of, it's actually quite a sophisticated drawing tool, it's amazing, to recreate this frame, and then it's strung together in the film, and you basically just see this amazing collection of different people's interpretations of that frame, and it's really beautiful. And the amazing thing is every experience that you watch is unique, because there are so many hundreds of thousands of frames that have been contributed. So it's really beautiful, so I just suggest you to go and look at that. But that's kind of the caliber of website that I'm wanting to create, and I have no idea how to do it. I have spoken to a few people, but I mean, it's a very costly thing, and it's at the back of my mind, and I want it to happen, and it's going to happen, but yeah, if anyone has any advice on that, please come chat to me. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that I didn't refer to the color theme, but I think it was pretty damn obvious. Yeah, I think a lot of people did have the fiery temper, but there was also a lot of, so there was that, but then there was also a lot of I think owing to kind of the teasing and mocking, there were a lot of shy, introverted gingers that I photographed. So yeah, I think the fieriness had kind of been affected through like feeling different and being ostracized and stuff. Yeah, but I wouldn't say, and actually, this is what I'm so excited about, if someone will listen, watch all my videos, but I want to draw all that data and actually quantify it. So offhand, I can't say for a fact that yes, there are these personality traits, because that was one of my questions to them. But the data will actually reveal something eventually when I eventually watch the videos. Say again?
You clearly, I just think it's very graphically what you show
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't really start the project because of that. It kind of emerged because it was so kind of apparent through dealing with other gingers. In terms of my own experience, I think I was made to feel different. There were very few redheads in my school. There were like 3 gingers in our year. I went to school in Bully. And I think, yeah, I think when you're younger, well, I think I also went to a Jewish school, and a lot of people had like Jews have dark hair.
Yeah.
And so I think also that the ideal of beauty that I was surrounded by wasn't what I looked like. And I didn't really, I didn't get much male attention when I was at school, and that always made me feel horrible about myself, and I did feel ugly. And only after school I kind of started loving it. I mean, I always loved my hair, but then I think I always wanted it to be different. I never wanted, eventually I think when you hit that 16 age, you actually want to be different, and I kind of embraced it then. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you thought of combining all the attributes and stuff that you found into finding out what the super ginger would be?
That's funny, because I actually was with the statistician guy. I wanted to do the super art, I didn't call it the super artist, but like what the kind of epitome of the artist is. So I haven't actually thought about that in relation to the gingers, but yeah, I would love to. But although, I mean, I could like put my own judgment on it, and when I look at my Pantone strip, I never said it, but this is my prejudice against. This is my kind of, so this Pantone. So like for me, in terms of the spectrum, sorry. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm just going to go back there because I actually should have gone to that other one so this one. So I don't know, for me it would be the ones that kind of, actually not really. No, for the hair color, yes. For me it would be the ones that kind of sit in the middle. The ones that are like the strawberry blondes and the dark auburns for me are like not the super gingers. But then in terms of the eye color, I wouldn't be able to say the same thing. I originally started working with percentages, and that didn't make sense because it kind of, so it's more like it's more a range rather than a, yeah. Although the freckle density is a percentage.
Yeah, I was just thinking
yeah,
in terms of like, if you had to overlay all the faces of all the gingers, what would the ultimate like?
Oh, you mean like physically, not in terms of the data? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I suppose you could try add other attributes and to see what's the most common and stuff like that.
Yeah. I have thought about the face merging thing a little bit, but I've seen it. I think I've seen it too many times, so I kind of stayed away from it.
Yeah.
And I don't have the skill to do that. But I do know people that do actually. And it would maybe be interesting to do that. Yeah. Cool.
So the thought, if you've got such a good database of gingers, you should probably consider crowdsourcing the funds.
So, interesting about crowdsourcing. So I actually did a crowdsourcing, I'll pull out my catalogue now. Book for sale. So I made this book from crowdsourcing. I did an Indiegogo campaign in October, November 2012. And the South African platforms weren't really kind of around then. So I didn't choose Kickstarter because Kickstarter requires a US bank account and US address. So I chose Indiegogo because you can do it you can be anywhere in the world. And I'd just gone to the Redhead Days. So I was like, okay, and I met all these gingers. So in my opinion about crowdfunding, I mean, it was amazing. So I tried to raise $10,000, which was 100,000 rand at the time, because I wanted to make like a hardcover, beautiful coffee table book. Printing's really expensive. And I raised $4,500. Oh, and the nice thing about Indiegogo versus Kickstarter is Kickstarter you have to take, if you don't reach your goal, you can't take any of it, whereas in Indiegogo you can choose to take whatever you get. So I managed to, and then after commission, PayPal and Indiegogo and bank charges and everything, I got 35,000 rand. And then I got a 20,000 rand grant from the business in South Africa. So this book, very thin book, soft cover, cost 55,000 rand to produce, can you believe it? But yeah, so crowdsourcing was an amazing thing, but my observations of it was that, and I actually have this, I can give them to you, I worked out the statistics around who gave and how much and why. But basically the majority of people that gave were my friends and family. I photographed 500 gingers and only about 40 of them gave. You would think that if you're in a book, I would want to own a book that I'm in. So the psychology around giving is strange to me. I'm still trying to figure it out, and I also have a non-profit organization, so it's something that I'm quite aware of as well. But the psychology of giving is strange, because essentially you were basically pre-ordering your book. It was $25 to pre-order a book, and then I also had different, I had a $5 thing, a $10 thing, and a $50 thing, and a $100 thing. But most people kind of went for the $25 pre-ordering book. So I think I did pretty well, but you would expect 500 gingers at least, I don't know, at least what, 10%. More, I don't think. Yeah, they were not 50. They were, I think May there was 45 at a push. I can't remember the exact number. I've got it here. But on the other hand, since my exhibition, I've received a lot more publicity. And I've got a much bigger database. So that is maybe a possibility.
I was just thinking you've got an amazing digital market. Which could go worldwide, viral, really grow.
Yeah. Sorry, say that again. I've got an amazing?
I think it's an amazing digital market.
Yeah.
The potential of it is really quite incredible, especially in the digital space, because it's quite physical. That space is going to be a much larger audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the truth is that definitely was that was kind of part of the plan, but I need like a proper plan, before I do it. Oh, sorry. But thank you. I saw questions, so come talk to me afterwards, whoever had their hand there.